In September of 1872, a group of 58 Norwegian hunters found themselves in a dire situation, as 6 ships had become stuck in the Arctic ice. With no hope of escape, 17 of the men rowed 350 kilometers to reach the so-called Swedish house in order to survive the winter. It had everything they needed: canned food and fuel for warmth, and even a collection of books. However, within a mere 6 months, they were all found dead. There were no signs of accidents or violence, and their deaths were not a result of starvation. So why did they die? Svalbard, also known as Spitsbergen, lies north of mainland Europe, about halfway between Norway and the North Pole. The island was first discovered by the Dutchman William Barents in 1596. Centuries following the discovery, Europeans started to hunt walrus, polar bears, and seals on the island. And in the 20th century, mining of coal was introduced on the island. But enough about the island's history. This story takes place in September of 1872, when 6 ships, bearing a total of 58 men, got stuck in the ice. They didn't have enough rations nor fuel to keep fed and warm during the cold polar winter. 7 of the men were sent out to seek help at a nearby scientific expedition, who had planned to spend the winter in these unforgiving lands. After a 40-kilometer hike, the 7 men reached the expedition camp and knocked on the door. They were met by faces marked by worry.
Our expedition has already swelled in size due to other sailors like you trapped in the ice. Our provisions are stretched to the breaking point. However, there is another house on the island some 340 kilometers away. It was built, stocked, and abandoned this summer by Swedish colonists.
As the men regrouped with the rest of the crew, it was decided that 17 of the men would row to the house, while 41 of the men would try their luck remaining with the ships. It took a full 7 days of rowing for the men to get to the house. As they settled in, they engaged in hunting polar bears and reindeer for sustenance for a few weeks. However, this was made impossible when the sun set for the last time on the 21st of November, not to be seen again for 2.5 months, marking the beginning of the polar night. In this darkness, their circumstances began to deteriorate rapidly. By the 2nd of December, 2 men were reported as sick. By Christmas, all of them had fallen ill. On the 19th of January, 2 men died. In February, 2 more perished, followed by 5 more in March. The last member of the group likely passed away just before they were discovered on the 16th of June. When the men were found, 4 of them were lying in the living quarters. In an adjoining room, 6 more bodies sprawled across the floor. Outside, the remainder of the group was found, with 5 men covered by tarpaulin and 2 others resting in shallow graves. As word of this tragic incident reached Norway, the men who died were enveloped in a cloud of dishonor and shame. Their deaths were deemed to be caused by scurvy, despite them having the means to prevent it. This left the men with little honor in the eyes of their compatriots. In 2008, a scientific expedition was launched to find out the truth of what happened in the so-called Swedish house. Upon examination of bones, they could completely rule out scurvy as a valid diagnosis. Scurvy would have caused generalized osteopenia, which is a loss of bone density. The bones found had a normal bone density. The scientists instead had another hypothesis: lead poisoning from the canned food. Upon examination of the lead concentration in the bones, they concluded that this hypothesis was most likely correct. This explains why the men started getting sick during December. That's when they started to rely more heavily on the canned food for nutrition. Before this, they ate whatever they managed to hunt. What makes this story even more tragic is the fact that if the 17 men had just stayed a few more weeks in their ships, they would have escaped the ice and made their way home. This is exactly what happened to 39 of the men who stayed with the ships. The ice broke up and they escaped in 2 ships. The remaining 2 chose to stay, died from scurvy in April of 1873.